Marketer of the day, number 511. Good enough versus perfectionism. Productivity, delegation, milestones, book publishing, content marketing, and more with Joanna Penn. Hey everyone, and thanks so much for tuning in. We're talking with Joanna Penn, and you can spell her last name as Penn. And Joanna is an award-nominated New York Times and USA Today best-selling author of thrillers under the name J.F. Penn. And she also writes inspirational nonfiction for authors, and she's an award-winning creative entrepreneur and an international professional speaker. You can find her at thecreativepenn with 2Ns.com. So Joanna, glad to be talking to you.
Oh, thanks for having me on the show, Robert. It's great to be here.
Great to have you here. So my understanding is that you're an author who just pumps out all kinds of great stuff, right?
Well, I think the word cranks out is sometimes a little difficult. I do write a lot of books. I have 26 books at this point, 17 novels, and I also write nonfiction. And so I do write fast, but I do it full time. So I think if you have a day job, it can be difficult. But I love writing, and yeah, it's the kind of the cornerstone of what I do. And I don't podcast as often as you, so I have more time.
Oh, super cool. So yeah, you do the books, you do the podcasting. So would you say that is there a secret to you being, persistent and motivated and showing up every day and always cranking that stuff out and getting your books finished and not being the cliche of someone who like has all this half finished stuff or always has things stuck in idea mode? Like, how the heck do you get all this stuff done?
There's a couple of questions in that one. I guess the first thing is finding what you really want to do with your life, because if you love what you do, then it's not work, right? So I think that's the first secret. So I really hated the corporate job I used to have, and I was really miserable. Even though I was paid really well, I just hated what I was doing. So I hated going to work. So I think if you're internally motivated, and certainly to become a writer who makes money, you do have to be motivated around producing work. And then the question, I guess the sub question about finishing things, that is a very different issue. So one is that you can be very motivated but still struggle to finish a book or to, put together a podcast or something like that. So the finishing energy, I call it, has a lot to do with fear, I think. So, you don't want to put that book in the world. You don't want to get that podcast out there. You don't want to necessarily speak in public, or that is a lot to do with fear of failure, fear of judgment, and you kind of just have to live with that. You have to get stuff out there, keep facing that self-doubt every day, and do it anyway, because you have this larger reason to do what you're doing, and it has to be more than money because let's face it, money is a motivation up to a point, but past that you have to love what you do. You have to love helping people if that's part of what you do, creating new things in the world, and that will keep you going through anything.
Super cool. So have that big why, that big goal that's more than just money. I mean, having money is great, but what are you going to do with that money? And then something that you said in there about that finishing energy and how that there's the fear of failure, but it sounds like, I don't know, like as you were saying that, and as I was thinking about what you were saying, it's like that the fear of failure or the fear of judgment is maybe sometimes in disguise, and we have the fear of failure in some way, but it manifests itself as, oh, I have to go and run spell check again, or I have to, get in the perfectionist mode. And it seems like as you're saying that, and as I'm thinking back in, my own times when I procrastinated, dragging my feet, things like that, it's like the fear of failure's in disguise.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, you and I both know, so you're at like 480 something on your podcast and I'm 360 something. And podcasting is the same thing. Like at the beginning, you think, oh my goodness, I hate my voice, or you want to go on YouTube and you hate your face. And the same thing with a book. It's like, oh, this will never be good enough. And the truth is that you never will be good enough. That the goalpost will always be moving as you move up the ladder. But the only way to get better with writing or anything we do, marketing, you're talking a lot about marketing, you get better by practicing. So if you think you're going to be terrible on Instagram, well, take a picture and stick it on Instagram and get started, and it's the same with writing, putting your first blog post out, putting your first podcast out, or being a guest on a podcast for a first time. It's going to be scary and hard. And the other thing that gets writers particularly, but can affect other creatives as well is the perfectionism issue. So many writers think, or think that, a writer will sit down and create something perfect the first time around. But of course, we do editing, right? I mean, you and I have both had technical nightmares with a podcast, or something goes horribly wrong, or you start coughing, and you can edit that later. And in the same way with a book, with writing, you can edit your words. And in fact, you should be editing your words and work with a professional to make your words as good as they can be, but still get them in the world. Because what I found is, like, if you spend forever on one thing, you actually need to get past that first thing in order to open the creative pipe. And once you open that, you will just be flooded with ideas, and things will come to you that you never thought would happen. Similar with marketing, take a first step, and you will find that other ideas will come to you as you start to practice.
I love that concept, and I mean it's perfect to come from an author, because any kind of plot that's worthwhile is, you start at point A and you think it's heading towards point B, but then along the way things happen and it really ends up at point C, D, or E. And you're making me think about times when like when I was in high school learning graphic design, things like that, the teacher said, write out a list of ideas, but list 10 or 20, just because I said list 10 or 20. So that way ideas number 1 through 7 suck, and ideas 8 through 10 really suck. But then because you got past all that stuff, then ideas 15 and 20 are the really good ones. But you wouldn't have come across that really good stuff unless you got through the muck, so to speak. And it sounds like the way that you're talking here, it's the same way with the podcasting, the books, with websites and different projects, that number one, just get started, but also realize that as you plug away and put things out, then new opportunities are going to reveal themselves to you. There'll be plot twists in your own life, and then the place that you end up at will be, you'll get there as a result of all the misfires and the mistakes that you made along the way. That's what I'm hearing from your advice here.
Yeah, and that starting where you are is really important. So, like when I did my first podcast, I started in 2009. So that was like before we had all the technology we have now. And the first call I ever did, I phoned someone up on a phone, like when we all used to have proper phones, landlines, and I held a recorder next to the phone. I put them on speakerphone, and I held an MP3 recorder there. And I mean, that's kind of crazy to think now. You and I speaking across the world on Skype, and the technology we have has moved on, but the principle of connecting with somebody by voice, that is something that's true. And the same thing, starting where you are with whatever you're doing is so important, and you will get better. And also things change. And that also, I like the idea you said, plot twists and things happen. And what I found with marketing particularly is that the more authentic you are, and the more you actually share that things happen and things happen in your life and plot twists happen in your life, then the more you resonate with people. So that would be another big tip. Whatever you're doing, is share authentically from your own experience. Even if you don't think your life is that exciting, then many other people out there think it's exciting. I live in Bath in England, which has 2,000-year-old Roman baths in the centre of town, and a medieval abbey. And I frequently just share pictures around where I live, because to people living anywhere else in the world, this is really cool, right? So I think coming back to that authenticity and sharing your journey is a really good basis to do your marketing from.
I love it. And when you were explaining the Roman baths in your city there, it makes me realize that there are things that are surrounding us that we think are ordinary and boring because we're surrounded by them all the time. It's kind of like, you see the same advertisement over and over again, you get the ad blindness. Well, in the same way, the content, in whatever way that manifests itself, if it's the marketing, the podcasting, the books, whatever, it's like there are things in our own lives that we could be sharing to be, authentic and genuine, and just have all this material, but we shoot ourselves in the foot. We discount these things that could be interesting to others, and the only way to know if they're interesting is by sharing them, but we discount those things because they're surrounding us all the time. So that's you're making a lot of sense here, and you're making me think of a lot of stuff here. And so a lot of what we've been talking about is just get started, just put something out there, knowing that you'll make the mistakes, knowing that you'll figure it out as you go along. So one thing that has me curious is, now that you've done all this and you've tried all kinds of different things over the years, I'm assuming or hoping that you come across some kind of a system here. So do you have anything like that? Like, do you have any sort of a structure or a routine to make sure that now that you've done all the trial and error, that you're doing the right things every day?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think it is important to realize that things change again. As in, content marketing now in 2018 is very different to what it was when I started in 2008, 10 years ago. Being an author, for example, there was no Amazon Kindle then, and the iPhone is just over 10 years old. So we're looking at, when I started, things change. So even if you come up with a system, it has to be a system around doing the thing. So for example, every morning I spend a couple of hours, creating first draft material for my books. And then every afternoon I spend a couple of hours doing marketing. So coming on your show is part of marketing, and your show is about marketing. But it's, so you have to make time slots. That would be the biggest thing that is going to last. So even when I'm still doing this in 50 years time, when I'm like 95, I will still hopefully be making time to create and time to share with other people. So that would be the first tip. And then the second one is always be learning, and don't rely on the same things. So I started on Twitter when it first came out, but Twitter now, again, is very, very different. Instagram now, is a newer platform, or not that new anymore, but it's very visual. And I think visuals are really important these days, whereas they weren't so important before. So definitely always be learning and try new things. Don't rely on a system for, specific things, because stuff changes. I mean, look at the Facebook algorithm. It's changing all the time. It used to be that there was some organic reach, and now you use paid ads. So in terms of my actual marketing system, I focus primarily on content marketing. So I have a podcast, as you say, and this is an example. Me coming on your show is also content marketing. I have a YouTube channel, which I've had a long time, but I've actually started changing that up to do more personal videos. So again, put your face on things, start to share from your own experience. I use social media, and I also use paid advertising, but in a small strategic way, because I'm a creative. I'm not a spreadsheet kind of analytics person. So I do use paid ads, but I don't run them all the time, because I just don't analyze them. And it's not very good to just throw money at stuff if you don't analyze it. So, and then also primarily I write more books. So to market books, a really good idea is write more books. I know you have some books on Amazon. And for me, that's really important. Things like audiobooks, podcasting is great to market audiobooks. So just circling back, the main thing is, are you creating something new in the world every day, whether that is books, courses, speaking, whatever you do for your revenue, and whatever you do to build your body of work in the world. And then the other thing is, make some time to do whatever marketing you're going to choose to do, whether that's content marketing, paid ads, whatever else you fancy.
Awesome. That was a wonderful answer. And so as you said, things change. And as you were listing off of those things that you're doing, so like, the Instagram, the podcast guesting, the YouTube, the paid ads, the audiobooks, the blogging, a lot of great stuff. So, but that some of that is new, some of that's developed over the last couple of years, and then as the years go on, some of that'll drop off, and who knows what sort of interesting things will be replaced. But it's like the evergreen advice in there is that schedule the time to do it, because the fact that we, have limited time every day, and that if things don't get put on the calendar, I mean, that probably dates back to the Roman Empire, and that will be true in the next 2,000 years from now. But then also always be curious, always be learning, and then always be doing. So that way you're not just resting on your laurels. That way, stuff doesn't stagnate. And so, have you ever gone through a rough patch in some of this stuff? Have you ever gone through a period of time where maybe things weren't so rosy, or you got into a funk in a rut and had to get out of it? Anything like that happen to you?
Well, I mean, I think the biggest awful time in my life was when I was, in terms of business, was when hit rock bottom at my day job. And I think what's so interesting now, because when I left that job, so I was 13 years a business consultant, implementing financial systems into large corporates. I was very highly paid, and in order to change from that job to write for a living, I had to take a pretty massive pay cut. We downsized. My husband's wonderfully supportive, and I was the prime wage earner at the time. So the rock bottom was realizing that in order to change my life, we would have to change our entire life, and stop, cut out a lot of the spending. We got rid of all our debt. We had a big radical shift because I literally was crying every day at my job. I was so miserable, and I did work part time for 4 years before I was able to leave the job and just make even $1,000 a month from books and speaking and all of that. But and then it took me, so I left my job in 2011. It took me 4 years to get back to the salary that I was used to. So in 2015, I hit that income, that six-figure income, and hired my husband out of his job. And now, I guess in 2018, I make multi six figures. So what I would say to people is it's inevitable that you have to have, and Seth Godin, calls it the dip. And the question is, can you get through the dip? So many people, like, again, I kind of hark back to when I started 10 years ago. So many people I started with aren't out there anymore, or they've pivoted and moved on or done something else. And one of the problems with having quite a long website that's been around 10 years is so many 404s with websites that disappear. And it's just incredible to me, how many people decide not to do this anymore. So I think that the down point for me was really my old job. And anytime I feel down now, is I look back at that and go, I am never going back to a day job. Never, never. And thankfully, since 2011, I have not worked for anyone else. I work for myself. I'm an independent author as well. I publish myself. I don't use traditional publishers. So I control my life, my revenue, my time. But obviously, I can put out a book and it doesn't sell and I feel a bit disappointed, or some months I don't make as much money as other months, or I get tired like everyone else. Working your own business is harder work than any day job. To be honest, I mean, my boss is pretty hard on me, so there are ups and downs, but I think the overarching thing is what we started with, which is, what do you want to do with your life? And every day I get up and, I look at, I measure my life by what I create. And I keep coming back to that. So what can I create today that will build my body of work for my lifetime? And that to me is the most important thing.
I love it, and I can relate to the hatred of the day job quite a bit. In that, I've been about, let's see, 9 years free of the day job. But while I was I was only in it for 3 years. But during that time, I was ramping up my business. The business was making way more than the 9 to 5 job, and I told myself I had all these reasons for not quitting. I mean, as you might have heard, health insurance kind of sucks in America, and it's a whole just messed up kind of situation. So that alone for me was a reason to stay in that day job, just because so that way I wouldn't have to figure out how to pay for the health insurance on my own. And that was one of about 4 or 5 reasons. And a few people at the time during that 3 year period really made snide remarks and made fun of me, and even just actively insulted me to my face about still having this 9 to 5 job. And I eventually quit. But while I was in it and right after I quit, I went through a lot of those same emotions that you're talking about there, of just, I mean, not completely hating it. It wasn't super terrible, but I didn't like it. It wasn't a good fit, and it was definitely a motivator to quitting. And it's still a motivator to keep going, because it's like, it's easy to just think that things are bad now or mediocre, but they could always get worse, right? Having to go back to that day job is way worse. And so I can definitely relate to a lot of that. But one thing I'm curious about, so with you, being motivated and trying new things and doing new things, and always always creating, what's your speed like? Like, if you have a new book you're working on, do you focus all your energy on just that? Or is it the kind of thing where, like, you have multiple things going on in parallel? Or, like, how fast do you go, and what's your turnaround time with these sort of books?
Well, as I said, I write for a couple of hours every morning, and I can't be hardcore creative for much more than that. So I might do editing later on in the day. But mainly, when I'm writing that first draft, it's 2 to 3 hours a day, 2,000 words to 3,000 words a day. So, it's normally going to take me a month and a half to write a first draft, 60, 70, 80,000 words. And then I do some editing and, then I do some publishing. So really, I mean, I think when people wonder about prolific writers, it literally is just hours in the chair. If you do 2 hours a day, or if you have a day job. I mean, when I wrote my first four books while I had a job, so let's be clear about that, I used to get up at 5 a.m. and write before work. And I know a lot of authors who write at night when their kids have gone to bed. So you have to find the time to create what you want to create in the world, and create your new life, whatever that will be. And the side hustle, people do that in between their day job. So I think for me it really is just every day, just a few more lines on the page, a few more pages in the book, another chapter done, and it really adds up. I think most people who are not prolific just spend a long time not writing instead of actually writing. And then obviously with fiction, I spend a lot of time thinking potentially beforehand. So my last novel, Map of Shadows, I thought about for about a year, but when I sat down and I dictated that first draft, I did that first draft in a month with dictation after I'd been thinking about it a while I did other things. So you can have ideas sort of on the back burner while you're writing other stuff. And then when you're ready, if you actually schedule the time, coming back to that again, you can get it done pretty quickly.
I love it. So you're on the Ernest Hemingway, Stephen King sort of plan of, even if it's a little bit every day. Oh, I mean, in your case, it's, 2 or 3 hours every morning. But even if it had been a tiny amount every morning for those people out there who are pressed for time, have a lot of things going on, even that little bit of progress every day is way more powerful than some people that let the idea sit for weeks or months at a time and then have to go back and pick up that speed. So that's really inspiring, and really I don't know, there's some amount of like the structure or the knowing your numbers, so that way when you say I want to have this book, instead of doing what a lot of people do of not having a plan, you say I want to have this book, it's going to be this length, and then working backwards, I know that based on my morning time, it'll take this number of days, or if I speak it out to speed things along, it'll take that number of days. So that way you're going in with somewhat of a plan that's structured to balance out your creativity. And in the name of talking at people scaling and playing a bigger game, and getting these books done and things like that, do you have any kind of a support team? Like I think you alluded to a coach a few minutes ago, but do you have anything in terms of like, do you hire out the editing, the marketing, the cover creation, anything like that?
Yeah, absolutely. I don't actually have a coach for my writing, but I do have professional editors, professional cover designers. I have marketing help, virtual assistant. I have about 11 contractors that I work with, which is quite common to a lot of solopreneurs out there who are building businesses. But what I would say is at the beginning, yes, I did hire an editor and cover designer, but I did everything else myself, So I did all my technical stuff on my podcast myself at the beginning, although now I have help. But yeah, so you can definitely bootstrap this stuff by learning to do it yourself. But as an author who wants to create a professional product, I would always recommend a cover designer and an editor. And I have lots of resources on that at my site, thecreativepenn.com, or there's a free ebook, Successful Self-Publishing, if people are interested.
Yeah, perfect. So so the creativepen.com, and then this free ebook, can you unpack a little bit about what that is and what it's about?
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, I get so many people asking me about self-publishing, and there are a lot of sharks in the water. It's a bit like, in the marketing industry, there's a lot of sharks in the water too. So I'm an author. I don't publish people. So I don't have any skin in the game. So Successful Self-Publishing is just on all the ebook stores, and it's in print as well. And it'll just take you through how to self-publish your book and what you need to have in place around your professional stuff, as well as the keywords, how to use Amazon categories and all of that, and a bit on marketing for fiction and non-fiction. So hopefully that will help some people, because I truly believe that it's funny, I heard someone on one of your recent shows say that writing a book isn't the new thing. Like right now you should be a guest on podcasts. And I was like, yeah, but you still need a book, because actually writing a book will change your life. It's not about a business card. Writing that book, if you are sitting there listening to this thinking, oh, I'd like to write a book, the reason you want to write a book is something inside you is driving you to do that. And that you should listen to that, because you will find that you have something important to say and something to put in the world. So I hope some of the people listening will write books and get them out there in the world.
I hope so too. As they say, you shouldn't die with your music stuck inside you. So people, yeah, I mean, they need to be taking some action and setting aside the time so that way their creativity can manifest themselves in the book, and not let that perfectionism creep in, as we talked about, not let all the details, all the technical stuff, which changes all the time, that shouldn't be a discourager. And they need to take that creativity, get motivated, do what needs to be done, and then figure out the whatever weird system is in front of them at this very time, right? Whatever Amazon has going on, and with the keyword optimization and the categories, like, doing both sides of the coin there, like putting their creativity to work, but also playing the game and doing the things that these marketplaces want. So that way the book actually sees the light of day and actually gets some traffic and gets some buyers. So like, people really need to go to thecreativepenn.com. That's TheCreativePenn.com to see what you have going on, and to get that freebie and some other resources. And so as we're winding down and we're on the subject, are there any other links that you feel like throwing out besides thecreativepenn.com, or is that just the place to be?
Yeah, sure. So if you like podcasting, or you'd like to come and listen to my voice some more, come over to the Creative Pen podcast, available on all the usual podcatchers. And if you have a question, the best thing is on Twitter at the Creative Pen, and I'm always happy to answer questions there.
Super cool. And yeah, I just want to say that, like, when I listen to podcasts and things like that, I feel like I don't always reach out as much as I should. So I encourage anyone and everyone listening to actually go to some of these websites. It's really easy to listen to one podcast after another and say, oh yeah, I heard that, I got some ideas. But I mean, if something sparked your interest, if you want to have a book and you've been blocked for one reason or another, or you want to do it faster, or you want to do it more, or for whatever reason, if this book stuff really gets your brain tickled, then you need to go to some of these websites. You need to go and contact Joanna on Twitter. Heck, follow her on Twitter, reply to her on Twitter, let her know that she had all kinds of amazing things to say on the episode. Go check out her blog, go check out her podcast, go check out her books and more, because that way you're going deep into what you've heard about, and you're not just going wide, right? You're not just going a mile wide and an inch deep. Now you're actually making progress on the path that you want to make, whether that means you're putting out these books to build your business, or you're putting out these books to make book sales, or whatever goal you have. You need to get there yesterday. Things are so fast paced these days, especially with some of this book stuff, that you need to take action on this right away. So you owe it to yourself right now, this very instant, to go to thecreativepenn.com, and we'll see you there. So thanks, Joanna, for stopping by and dropping all kinds of crazy and great knowledge bombs about what works for you and what works for others as far as making books getting published. So thanks a bunch.
Thanks so much for having me, Robert.
Do you want a podcast like this one? Well, what's been holding you back? What if it was easy and you had someone to help you get it going? Check out doneforyoupodcasting.com, where we'll handle some or all of your podcast setup, production, marketing, and more. See you soon at doneforyoupodcasting.com.